Friend of mine, when I was, I think, in college, and I don't think it was his quote, but he used to say, "The more things change, the more they stay the same." We got to get past that. We got to get past the fact that the more things change, the more they stay the same. We've got to get long-lasting, foundational, embedded change.
Yeah, and I think what, I've heard I forgot who coined that phrase, but what they really mean is, and they're right, but that is the summary of what I've been trying to explain all along, and that is you can't legislate hearts.
Right.
And you can't let that stop you from making substantial changes. But even when we make those changes, that doesn't mean that there won't be a group of people that think of Nazism as the heyday
Right.
of racism. You cannot legislate hearts, but you can create a swell for a common principle.
Welcome to Peter and Phil's Courageous Conversations, a podcast addressing race relations and social issues in hopes that you'll be inspired to do the same. Now, let's begin our conversation with your hosts, Dr. Peter Weinstein and Dr. Phillip Nelson.
Welcome to Peter and Phil's Courageous Conversations. I'm Phillip Nelson, and I'm introducing the next podcast of a series of conversations that I had with Dr. Peter Weinstein. The title of this conversation is You Can't Legislate Hearts. I hope you enjoy.
The New Deal.
Yes.
Metaphor.
Right. I don't care. I have no problem with the New Deal. I am a big government kind of guy for big government kind of issues. I'm as capitalistic as anybody else, except that I believe the pendulum has swung too far with capitalism. So much so that one of the reasons we cannot respond to the pandemic is that we've allowed our private industries to ignore national needs.
Yes.
And so we have to buy our N95 masks from China. We have to buy the reagents for testing from Britain and Germany and Brazil. We get our PPE from China because we've allowed globalization. And this is the part of Trumpism I agree with, except that I don't believe that America is number one. Just like I don't, how do I put this? My family is my top priority, but I teach my children that if they don't share their wealth, if they don't support their communities, they don't invest in others, then they're going to spend their lives in a gated community. They're going to spend their lives behind walls to protect themselves from others. And life is so much better if you immerse in life. And you won't do that if you're afraid of your neighbor.
Right.
And you will be afraid of your neighbor if you never get to know them. America became great when America shared, when America tried to help. There is such a thing as self-interested. There's a self-interest that is part of that obligation to share, obligation to help. It is in my best interest to prevent the ghettos that occur in the desert of Palestine. It's in my best interest to make sure that the poor in Iraq are paid attention to by us. Otherwise, we're just growing terrorists.
We had the financial ability to do so.
We still have, but we have created so many more demands for our own needs. We made paying taxes an unpatriotic act. We have even elected a president who has proudly told you that he hasn't paid taxes, as a reflection of our views of that.
Yeah, well, and it doesn't help to be as isolationist
Yes.
jingoistic as we are right now, because all we're doing is setting up the rest of the world to be antagonistic towards us instead of the globalism that we should be looking at.
I'm sorry. This isn't about Trump.
No.
This is about our future.
Yes.
And until we coin that, until we understand this isn't about ending Trumpism. This is about creating the future that we were trying to create 30 years ago. Yes, this was the time to talk about racism. That's just one part of the dystopian society that we're in right now.
Well, what's interesting is racism seems to be like cicadas. It comes up every 25 years.
Yeah.
And, we're not going to get rid of cicadas, but I think we can get rid of racism. Well, at least work towards that. And we didn't ask your feelings as to what you've seen change, because you're in the middle of it. We're white privilege. We're on the periphery of it. So.
Well, again, it's not that you're in the periphery. It's just that privilege allows you not to have to deal with it.
Correct.
That's what privilege is.
I can turn my head.
You don't even have to turn your head.
Yeah.
You don't have to. It's like the discussion we had about your childhood and about your school. Black people just showed up. You didn't know nothing about their journey.
No.
You didn't have to know. You looked up and you saw them.
Yep.
And you didn't think about, well, how did you get here? Why would you think about that? See, everybody has privilege. I mean, Black privilege assumes that you all have silver spoons in your mouth. And then you resent us when we say that, and then we're shocked when we find out that you actually had some obstacles to overcome too. You can't take on too much responsibility. You are who you are. Use guilt. And you've heard me say, I feel guilty. You probably was like, why do you feel guilty? But I have children too. I have grandchildren. And if I truly believed that they were in dire straits and nothing changed, then I did waste my life. Now, I don't believe that, but there are times when I feel it. I get tired of the fight too. But the point is, understand what you can change. Understand what you can achieve. Understand the bigger picture. Understand that racism, separatism, tribalism has been a component of human nature ever since there were two different ethnicities.
It probably goes back to Homo sapien, Homo erectus, even before then.
Yeah, understand that. What we're trying to do is learn how to keep those differences from aborting progress for us as a society. And we've grown intellectually enough to be able to understand that we all share this world. And the world is made up of selfish people and giving people and sharing people and Black people and white people. And any one of us can behave in a way that's detrimental to society. And rules and laws and practices that are promulgated are generally promulgated for the benefit of society, which means they're promulgated to control those inner demons that we all have, to provide guidance on how we're supposed to act. And that's the bigger picture. But as a human being, you have an obligation to your society, which means that you do have influence at the ballot box. You do have influence in political discussions. But as a veterinarian, you're not gonna cause a big ripple or a big wave. We are an orphan organization. And the changes we want to impact are societal. There is no way we can create a bubble in our profession and say, this is how we act as professionals. And then we go home and have a slave or tolerate racism. So let's understand the magnitude of the issue here.
Friend of mine, when I was, I think, in college, and I don't think it was his quote, but he used to say, "The more things change, the more they stay the same." We got to get past that. We got to get past the fact that the more things change, the more they stay the same. We've got to get long-lasting, foundational, embedded change.
Yeah, and I think what I've heard that's I forgot who coined that phrase, but what they really mean is, and they're right, but that is the summary of what I've been trying to explain all along, and that is you can't legislate hearts,
right?
And you can't let that stop you from making substantial changes. But even when we make those changes, that doesn't mean that there won't be a group of people that think of Nazism as the heyday
right.
of racism. You cannot legislate hearts, but you can create a swell for a common principle. In every instance where there is institutional avarice and institutional authority to discriminate against a group of people for the favor of another group of people, it is an abnormal situation of power. It is not the reflection of the majority of the people. It is an abrogation of power, be it Stalin's Russia or Putin's Russia or Pinochet's Brazil or Hitler's Germany. It seems to be initially a shiny apple to a slight majority at the time, but the maintenance of those systems is through intimidation and power.
Well, and going back to this, you can't legislate hearts, which is really a great statement, but you can educate hearts.
No, yes.
So that's what we're trying to do, is change hearts,
right?
Change minds,
right?
Because you'll have greater long-lasting change.
Right.
Change hearts, change minds.
Actually, you change minds, you change hearts.
Right. Change minds, change hearts. You don't need legislation with a changed mind and a changed heart.
Well, you still need it because we're imperfect. We all have demons. So you do need legislation, just like you need a traffic light.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting you don't need legislation generally.
I got you.
Probably do without specific. We shouldn't have to say, be nice.
Well, see, yeah, that's true. But so here's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, and you're right, except that when I hear you say that, again, it's the white privilege that's coming through for me.
Okay, I'll buy that.
Because growing up in the South, I had people being nice to me all the time. They were being nice as long as I was nice, as long as I accepted the status quo. But if I was upset because I didn't get to vote, then all of a sudden, so I had to have legislation in order to protect some of my rights, or in order to acquire rights that you automatically had.
Point well taken. You are correct. They were saying one thing to your face and doing another thing behind your back.
Or not trying to change anything, just accepting it.
Yeah. Well, and my jaded, the glass is half full approach says, if everybody liked everybody, maybe
right. Yeah. No, that's not true. No, I'm sorry. It's just not. Because in some cases it's overt, and in some cases it's just blindness.
Yeah. No, you're well taken. Change minds, change hearts, codify it to make sure.
Well, yeah, but see, I don't see that as anything special. Like I said, it's like the traffic light. You have to tell real estate agents there are rules that real estate agents have to abide by. Otherwise, a lot of people would get ripped off.
Yeah.
Why do we have veterinary medical boards? Because there are veterinarians who may not keep up.
Yeah.
Because there are veterinarians who may utilize bad business practices.
And there are people who want to think that they're veterinarians. And so you have a veterinary medical board as well to kind of set a community standard.
Yeah, because some people may not want to go to vet school or may not ever get into vet school, but think they're good enough to practice veterinary medicine. So you have to have legislation. You have to have rules in order to get along with each other, because I'm selfish. I have selfish interests. You have selfish interests. So if you let me get away with running a red light and I don't get a ticket, then I might actually develop a habit of challenging that yellow light every time. And eventually I'm going to run into somebody who also challenges the yellow light. Once I get away with it enough, and if I get reckless enough, I go from challenging the yellow light to timing the green one. As soon as it's green, I'm out, not knowing there are other people like me who are challenging the yellow light. But if there are no lights, then traffic comes to a standstill at intersections. Either everybody stops and timidly crosses it, or there are accidents.
Yeah, it's kind of like a power outage.
Yes.
So the people who have the big muscle cars, they think they can just go do whatever they want. And the rest of the world, who is much more conservative, probably is watching and looking. They're doing a 360-degree look just before they even take their foot off the brakes. So.
Right.
And right now we got way too many muscle cars.
And it's amazing to me how at major intersections now, when there's a power outage, how quickly we go to a four-way stop.
Yes.
Right? But that's because we've been trained.
Yes.
We've been conditioned to do that.
Yep.
We understand what a four-way stop is. If we hadn't had that concept, then our hypothalamus would take over and we'd be pushing each other.
Fortunately, we don't go back to our reptilian brain.
Right.
Stimulate, inspire, support, change minds, change hearts, one step at a time.
Thank you for joining us for another courageous conversation. Be sure to follow us and check back next week for more.